Hello and welcome to Virtual Investor Conferences. My name is Matt Lateplo, and on behalf of OTC Markets, we're very pleased you have joined us for our next live presentation from TRU Precious Metals Corp. Before I introduce our speaker, a few points to note. Please submit your questions in the question box at the bottom left of the slides. Once the Q&A session is ended, you will automatically be transferred into the TRU Precious Metals booth, where you can continue to ask questions via chat and access additional shareholder materials. On a final note, all of today's presentations will be recorded and available for 24/7 replay. At this point, I am very pleased to welcome Joel Freudman, co-founder and CEO of TRU Precious Metals Corp, which trades on the OTCQB venture market under the symbol TRUIF and on the TSXV under the symbol TRU. Welcome back, Joel.
Thank you, Matt, for having me. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in the middle of your day. I appreciate it. Glad to be here, and I'll get going. I've already been introduced, but I am the co-founder and CEO of TRU Precious Metals. I'm very pleased to be here presenting to you today. I'll just start off with a quick disclaimer slide, which is there will be forward-looking statements in this presentation. So just keep in mind that although we do our best, not everything plays out as we hope, but we always do our best to execute. Now, another reason I mentioned this slide is because I actually drafted that slide myself. My background is a securities and M&A lawyer, which I think is pretty unconventional for a junior mineral exploration company. That kind of mindset very much influences how I and our team approach this business at TRU Precious Metals. And so I think it's worth keeping in mind throughout the presentation, as there is a focus on not only compliance, but also corporate transactions as we build our company. Now, I'll leave it on this company highlight slide for a little bit. I came on this presentation about a year ago, and we were still very much a company in our infancy, building things out. I think we'd acquired 2 or 3 properties at the time, fairly early stage. Well, what a difference a year makes in how we've expanded the company. And certainly having the legal background in the capital markets has been very helpful for the build out. In the past year, we've grown the company's market cap from somewhere around, $1 to $3 million to currently sitting around $12 million. And how specifically have we done that? I'd say through a combination of mergers and acquisitions, financing, and of course, exploration for a mineral exploration company. The centerpiece really for TRU Precious Metals is our flagship asset, which is called the Golden Rose Project. Now, we're located in Newfoundland, which is in the easternmost province in Canada. I will touch on it a little bit further in this presentation. A great jurisdiction to explore, but you may have heard about Newfoundland. For those of you who haven't, again, I'll get into a bit more detail about the province, but there have been some very exciting gold and base metal discoveries there in the past couple of years. And so we moved in late last year. We started picking up properties, but the flagship or the real centerpiece of TRU Precious Metals, which is something that no one else can duplicate, is our real estate, is our asset right in the middle of Newfoundland on an ideal location, which I'll also show some maps to really put this into focus. It's the Golden Rose Project. We have a land package that's about 236 square kilometers, so it's very significant in size, and it's located on what's called the Valentine Lake Structural Corridor, and it's on the same shear zone as 2 major gold deposits. In fact, perhaps I should just skip ahead just so I can really illustrate why that's important. This property map really illustrates it here, our Golden Rose Project. We acquired this project from a company called Altius Minerals. They're TSX listed. They have a value of a market cap around $700 to $800 million. They're a very sophisticated project generator and royalty company. And so they had secured this land here on this diagonal line that you can see in a property map called the Cape Ray Valentine Lake Shear Zone. Well, we did a corporate transaction with them at the start of the year. We optioned this Golden Rose Project from Altius as to be the cornerstone of our company, really. The reason it's so exciting as a project is because it is between 2 major gold deposits. To the southwest of us, the Cape Ray Gold Project, which is owned by an Australian-listed company called Matador, they already have a deposit there, or they actually have multiple smaller, medium-sized deposits totaling 840,000 ounces of gold. So that's not guesswork. That's real gold in the ground. You might say, oh, that sounds kind of nice. It sounds kind of small. Matador has a lot of work left to do. So those numbers are likely to go one way, which is up. But more than that, our neighbor on the other side is the behemoth in the area, Marathon Gold. They're also TSX listed. They also have a market cap around $700 million, and they have a resource. And again, this is quantifiable. It's through, ongoing drilling and testing, not guesswork, 4 million plus ounces. And that number continues to grow through their infill drilling. So Golden Rose, if you want to liken the center, a lot of people say, oh, we're in Newfoundland, we have projects in Newfoundland. We're not only on the best street in the entire province, and in fact, the only one that has multiple deposits on it, we're literally between the two biggest houses on the best street. So from a real estate perspective, what better place could you possibly want to go? And certainly from a geological perspective, it's on this street, it's on the structural corridor, which is known to host gold deposits. So that was our first big corporate transaction from Altius, which is now the cornerstone of our company. We do have a couple of other properties, but I won't spend too much time because I know everyone's time is limited. Newfoundland is a great place to explore and to do work and to run a mineral exploration business. I will touch on that a bit again later. We then undertook, after securing this asset, we then undertook two financings, one in March and one in June, to raise a total of $7 million Canadian in capital. Through the first raise, it was heavily retail-based. We raised $3.5 million on the backs of Golden Rose before we'd even set foot on the project, because people did believe in the prospectivity of the property. In June, we did another $3.5 million raise of flow-through financing. Actually, that first raise was significantly oversubscribed. So, great that we had a lot of excitement around the project. In June, we followed that mostly retail raise with an all-institutional financing to raise another $3.5 million of flow-through funds, which are Canadian tax-advantaged financing, where the money has to go in the ground. You have to spend it on exploration. So, we financed ourselves significantly from really a startup company earlier this year in order to explore Golden Rose. And between those financings and the option transaction to acquire Golden Rose, we now have two large institutional shareholders in our base, in addition to smaller institutions. Eric Sprott, who's a Canadian precious metals and mining billionaire who founded a large wealth management firm up here and who is a private investor now who takes stakes in promising companies. He owns about 13.5% of TRU Precious Metals. He is our largest shareholder. Right behind him is Altius Minerals, who optioned us the Golden Rose project. And that option deal for us to acquire this project is heavily shares and exploration based. So I will give some of the terms later on, but what's an important takeaway from the structure of that deal? We weren't paying them a lot of cash for the asset and then they could just walk away. They're really betting on our company and our team by virtue of equity ownership and having dollar exploration commitments to really, sorry if I cut in a little in and out here. Obviously, the company is surrounded by a very experienced team, which includes myself as the CEO, but we also have significant mining experience, which of course you'd want for a mineral exploration company, as well as legal and governance experience, a number of people who've been successful in the capital markets. So I think we're well positioned team-wise. And then we still have millions of dollars left from these financings earlier this year. Even as we've now got drilling ongoing, we still have a very strong treasury. To give a little bit of information on our cap structure here, we have about 67 million shares outstanding now. So, we try to be, I'd say it's a pretty reasonable float for our stage of development, particularly when you consider we have Sprott plus Altius owning about 1/4 of that float. Our company is still only valued somewhere around $12 million. Based on our last published financials, we had about $5 million in the bank. You're not really paying a whole bunch for the property and its prospectivity at this point. And also, this is in an environment where gold is trading in a range. So we do believe there's good upside potential left. Of course, I will say that, but it'll really be judged by our drill results from Golden Rose. Now, in terms of our team, I've given you a bit of background. I'm a transactional lawyer by training. I've been running a merchant bank, Resurgent Capital, for the last 5 years, where we help take companies public and build up, junior public companies. But really, what's key for us, I think, in addition to other executives, is our technical personnel, our exploration personnel. Our VP of Property Development, Barry Green, is based in Central Newfoundland. He's about a 15-minute drive from one of our properties. And to get to Golden Rose is about a 4.5-hour drive. I've done the drive with him, partially via logging road, partially via highway. And in fact, a highway bisects that property. So, we don't have to cut our way through the Amazon or anything like that in order to get to a project. We don't have to fly people into some remote camp. We can drive to our mineral exploration project. What does that mean? Much better economics for down the road and good infrastructure access in terms of logistics. Barry has over 3 decades of experience. He's worked in the industry. He's worked as a public company executive on the exploration front, which is rare to find in Central Newfoundland. And he's worked as a consultant, for technical consulting firms. And he actually recruited away our exploration manager, Pierce Bradley, also lives in Central Newfoundland, was working with a competitor of ours who's building a gold mine and has over 3 decades of experience in mineral exploration. So these are the guys on the ground, supplemented by a field team that we've grown out over the last 6 to 12 months to have an in-house field team. They're on the ground. They're easily able to access the project. They're very familiar with the geology of Newfoundland, of course, and they have importantly, some of the type of things that get overlooked, I think, in a pitch like this. They have access and relationships with all kinds of people in the government, drill providers, equipment providers. So they're able to do little things here and there to help keep our costs in check or to help get the government to expedite permitting. It's all these kind of things that come from having a local team that are significant competitive advantages for TRU Precious Metals. We're also supported on the corporate front by a new-ish CFO. We hired her in September, Olga Nikitovich. Started her career at PricewaterhouseCoopers. She's been a CFO and, in some cases, CEO of junior mineral exploration companies. So, good on strategy as well as accounting. And we have a corporate secretary, Joanne Archibald, also 3 decades of experience with the corporate governance functions of public companies. So, I think a strong management team with a lot of capital markets and mineral exploration experience. They're supplemented by a strong board of directors. Our lead director, Damian Lopez, also a securities and mergers lawyer. We have Colin Sutherland, who's an accountant. He has run significant, mining companies of size before, including perhaps most notably McEwen Mining with Rob McEwen. He's a great addition to our board. Barry's on our board, and we have a second geologist on our board, Dave Hladky. He's got over 2 decades of experience across Canada, North America, like Canada, U.S., Mexico. So we have a very strong management team and board, and in betting on a junior mineral exploration company, in addition to the property, you're also counting on the management team to run the company diligently, cost-effectively, prudently, and strategically. And so I think we have all the building blocks in place in terms of key personnel. We are supported by a good team across things like corporate communications, finance, admin, capital markets, so that we have a well-rounded company poised to capture any kind of opportunities that come up. Now, I've spoken about Newfoundland, and why is Newfoundland interesting? Some of you may be familiar with the province, but many of you probably not. That's part of why it's been mostly overlooked from an exploration perspective for the last little while. There's been a real modern-day gold rush in the province for the last, at this point, 2 years. There's a company called Newfound Gold. They hit bonanza-grade gold in the center of Newfoundland, and since then there's been companies after companies piling into the region because it's a great area play. That's the shakeout. I think the initial shakeout has started to happen over the last 6, 12 months. And you're seeing really the companies that are hanging in there, not only financed well, but also are located in terms of the right geography and geology. You can no longer just throw a stone somewhere and say, oh, well, I'm in Newfoundland, I have great land. It's really not the case. You need to be on the right geological structures. And so where Newfound Gold appears is one great area. The other great area is where we're located because we're between these 2 significant deposits, again, on the Cape Ray Valentine Lake Shear Zone, and other people cannot snap up that land. So that's a real competitive advantage we have in terms of our property. Newfoundland has great infrastructure. Like I said, there's a road, and in fact, a highway, like a provincial highway that runs through our property. There's a hydro line that goes across the property too. It's drivable. There's an airport a couple hours away. There's skilled workforce in Newfoundland because they have both oil and gas and mining exploration industries. So there's all kinds of skilled, geologists and other technical people and service providers that are in the province. It's a great place. A stable government as well. It's part of Canada, as stable as any government is nowadays. Newfoundland is a great place to do business and great place to explore for minerals. So we're very fortunate and pleased to have set up shop there. I'll go back to the property slide. Again, the key real estate for the TRU perspective, and really frankly for many mineral exploration companies, is the Cape Ray Valentine Lake Shear Zone, which is this diagonal line from the bottom left of the province. The pink is Matador of Cape Ray with 840,000 ounces. You see this fairly large orange blob, that's us, TRU's Golden Rose project. And for any of you who were here last year, that what's now a blob used to be a, relatively speaking, postage stamp, because we've more than doubled the property through an aggressive series of acquisitions this summer. Because we want to snap up as much of the land as we possibly can, because we believe that we're in the right zone for discovery. And like I mentioned, on the other side of us the largest undeveloped gold resource in all of Eastern Canada, Marathon Gold's Valentine project with over 4 million ounces. This map is actually a pretty key one to keep in mind when you're trying to look at, TRU as an investment potential, and also even other companies in the region of the areas you want to be at in Newfoundland. Golden Rose project is a flagship. Again, it's on the Cape Ray Valentine Lake Shear Zone. You might say, okay, well, is there anything good at the project? These guys are in the right area. What kind of merit does the project have on a geological level? Golden Rose, for starters, it's a huge property. It probably would take us a year to surface work to even get a handle on all the potential drill targets on the property. This is what the geologists are telling me. So there's a lot of runway to explore on the property, but there's already known gold in the ground. Obviously very important. This is not a grassroots property. Much of it is unexplored or underexplored, but there's also a key zone called the Woods Lake Gold Zone. There is gold in the gold zone. Historic drill intercepts include, a series of numbers here on the left side. You might say, oh, well, these numbers don't sound so large. I think what's important to keep in mind, probably two things. Number one, grade is not everything. So you may have heard of, there's a newfound gold, or there's some other companies that have very high grades. You don't always have continuity, necessarily build a mine because you have 0.3 meters of 100 grams a ton. You need continuity, right? You need there to be enough gold in the ground to eventually be economic for mining. And number two is these kind of numbers are consistent with what neighbors have, Matador and Marathon. And Marathon's actually putting their mine into production within the next year, year and a half. They have Franco-Nevada has a royalty on their project. One of the Franco founders owns a large chunk of the company. So that's not guesswork again. That's a mine being built, and their grades are somewhere around 1.7 grams per ton, contributing to 4 million ounces of gold. So these are the Cape Ray Valentine Lake Shear Zone. It tends to be less about very high grades and much more about more bulk tonnage. Let's say there's a lot more of it. There's a lot more gold at lower grades in the ground. But what's lucky, I guess, for the companies operating there, including us, is it tends to be closer to surface. You're not drilling 600 meters or 800 meters to hit the gold. You're getting a lot of gold hits 50 meters, 100 meters, 150 meters down, which of course means cheaper drilling programs. There are also other areas aside from the Woods Lake Gold Zone on a property that have all kinds of potential at surface. We're currently drilling a 5,000 meter program focused on the Woods Lake Gold Zone. We're also looking at the King George IV area, and I'll show a couple of interesting pictures on the next slide. They're simply two of the areas we've already identified on the property. We've done a lot of soil sampling, prospecting, mapping, airborne survey. We're trying to be systematic in our approach, and it's turning up interesting things like you see in the central image here. This is a different area of the property. It's called Jacob's Pond, and all these yellow bubbles, the bigger the bubble, the more gold there is at surface. So as you can see here, there's all kinds of bubbles that are anomalous gold values, which means it would be unusual to find that amount of gold, if you're walking down the street. And in some cases, they're actually significant gold, like pretty high gold grades when you start to look at the bedrock and float samples. So basically, you're picking up rock, sending them into the lab. We had one piece of rock here, and grams per ton gold. That's like definitively high grade, as well as 11% copper, which is an off-the-charts grade for copper. Although keep in mind this is at surface, is not drilling, and 368 grams per ton silver, again off the chart. So you don't know that the grades will be replicated under the ground. We haven't even drilled here yet, and this is only one stretch of the property that we've started to do surface level exploration. So this really gives you a sense of the potential magnitude of what we're finding at Golden Rose and what could be there. And actually, this picture is part of a 20-kilometer, 13, 14 mile new stretch we discovered at the north end of Golden Rose just in the last 3 or 4 months through a combination of soil sampling and airborne geophysical surveying that hasn't even been explored, but that obviously has these kind of soil sample results all the way along it, 13, 14 miles. So you can imagine how many drill targets that's going to generate as we do more and more surface work to prove up, over the course of 2022 and beyond. So I guess you probably get the sense we are pretty excited about Golden Rose for all these kind of reasons. In terms, just to go back to the drilling, the picture on the far left here is visible gold, as in we drill in one of our drill holes at Woods Lake Gold that we've already completed. We don't have assays back yet. Unfortunately, the assay labs are pretty back up in Newfoundland. That's a challenge the industry has to deal with. So it does mean longer lag times to get real results. But there was enough gold in this drill hole that with the naked eye, not a microscope, with the naked eye, you can see gold in the drill core we're pulling out of the ground. And this is also consistent with our neighbors on either side who also tend to have visible gold in some of their core. This other image, if you look at the third image with all these little gold pieces, this is visible gold we collected at the surface at the King George 4 area. So that's, the second target that we're currently drilling in our current 5,000 meter program. I guess you're starting to get the sense. It's basically like everywhere we look on the property with every geoscientific method we're using, we're seeing gold. So, I mean, I take that, especially as the CEO of the company and an investor in the company, I take that as a good start. We still have to prove it up through drill results. I'm very cognizant of that. But I think we're getting all the right signs that we should be set up for some interesting success and potential. Here's just the terms of the Altius agreement. Again, I think we're actually kind of well ahead of our commitments here. So that shows, we're pretty fervent believers in the property. We have already spent, I don't know if it's $1 to $1.5 million in exploration, including the ongoing drilling. So we're well ahead of our commitments in terms of exploration spending. We've already satisfied the first year spending requirements, which don't even fall due until February. So we're getting ahead on year 2. The same thing for the share issuance. We've already issued, I think, the first 2 tranches of our shares, including the bulk of them on closing of this deal back in May, it would have been. So we're ahead of our option commitments here on the property. We're doing, we're doing our homework on the property and then getting out and actually executing on the work. We're doing what we can within our control to deliver on the program we told the market we're going to do and that Altius wants us to do. And they're really betting on our company and our team to properly develop and explore this property, which is why the option agreement is, again, light on cash and heavy on equity in our company, as well as exploration dollars going into the ground that we have to raise. We do have a secondary project. I won't spend too much time on it, but it's further up the Cape Ray Valentine Lake Shear Zone, earlier stage. It's seen some historical drilling with some pretty decent historical grades. We had a couple of hits with some good continuity here. Some of our holes were in the wrong direction. As we learned, you got to learn about the property somehow, and that's doing a limited, cost-effective drill program. But we do see that this zone here at the TWILITE is still open in another direction. And so this is a property that may merit further exploration by us in 2022, or it could be a potential trading chip for someone who wants a property that also has known gold on it. I think that's a good position to be in. Our neighbors, as I mentioned, Marathon Gold, Matador Mining. These are really, these are the biggest houses, these are the biggest players in the area. They flank our company. We're sandwiched between their gold deposits. Excellent position to be in that other people can't replicate. And that's why we're snapping up any possible free land around Golden Rose that we can to consolidate the project. And sorry, one more thing on this slide. You can see the grades for our neighbors. If you look in where would this be? You look at the largest undeveloped gold resource in Atlantic Canada, their reserves 1.36 grams per ton. Their resources 1.7 grams per ton. You look at Matador, resources 3.15 grams per ton, 1.6 grams per ton. You don't need huge numbers to have a deposit that could be economic enough to put into production as a mine. I think it's an important takeaway. In terms of peer comparison, I think we're cheap. I'm the CEO, so my job is to say I think we're cheap. But if you look at our comps, in terms of other people who are like our neighbors, Marathon Gold, 700, Matador, a smaller deposit, but still has a resource, $73 million. We're down here at $12 million with several million in cash in the bank. So we think that if we prove up some results with this, initial drill program at Golden Rose, we think we should get a re-rating and start coming closer to, let's say, a Matador, who's still early enough in building out their resource. We have a couple other early stage properties, but we don't spend too much time or effort on them. Nice to have those. And in terms of why to invest in us, hopefully I've kind of covered it here. Golden Rose is really the centerpiece. You're betting you're betting, I'd say, on the property for sure, and the merit of it based on all the geological indicators we've seen so far. And in addition, I guess in the bottom left here, you're betting on our team to be diligent and prudent and strategic in how we approach the exploration of the property. And in terms of transactions, and the legal background and being deal oriented, we did rattle off about 1/2 acquisitions in the middle of the summer between May and July, let's say, to expand the Golden Rose property to more than double it. So between staking, option agreements, and outright acquisitions, heavily transactional when warranted to consolidate what we consider to be very prospective ground. We do think, hopefully that our drill results come back positive such that our company gets re-rated. And in terms of some other options here, on an M&A front and in terms of our properties other than Golden Rose, we are always looking at ways to monetize non-core properties, transact on, even things like Golden Rose, look out for potential corporate M&A down the road where it might make sense. These play into the kind of more transactional entrepreneurial nature of our company, which is you definitely the key to building values through the drill bit, but there are other things that can be done at the corporate level to build the value of the company. So that concludes the bulk of the presentation here. I have a couple minutes left, so I'll try and get to some questions here. Let's see. So the question is, just a moment here. What attracted Eric Sprott to take a large stake in TRU, and what is your ongoing relationship with OTC Minerals? So Sprott did invest in a handful of companies in Newfoundland, but he's a billionaire. He didn't get there by just throwing around money mindlessly. If you actually drill down, no pun intended, and you look at the companies he invested in, it tends to be companies that are on either the Cape Ray Valentine Lake Shear Zone or on the Appleton Fault, which is where Newfound Gold is. And so, he saw TRU, we control 45 kilometers, or that's maybe about 30 miles of strike length along this Cape Ray Valentine Lake Shear Zone. That's the ideal place to explore. He's betting on the geology being proven out. And what's your ongoing relationship with Altius? Altius has been very supportive. They're pretty hands-off. I mean, neither of these institutional shareholders, hound us. They let us get the job done, which I think is a good vote of confidence in our team and our company. But Altius is there every so often to provide technical support to us, even though formally they don't have to. So they sent down their VP of Exploration to our property just last week, actually. Their VP of Exploration, their chief geologist, they'll share data they have on the project from when they staked it. It's a very positive relationship because they want to see us make a discovery because it will make their shares of TRU worth more, and it will eventually, hopefully, lead to a royalty for them. Let's see. I've got some other questions here. What are your key milestones in 2022? That's a great question. Probably something I should have touched on. We've completed the bulk of the 5,000 meter drilling program at Golden Rose right now. Because of the assay lab backlogs, we are unfortunately probably not going to get any results until January. Pretty frustrating, but so be it. Everyone's dealing with the same challenges. So we should be pretty on a frequent basis, rolling out drill results over the course of Q1 2022. Key milestones would really, the initial one in Q1 would really be get back drill results and evaluate from there. And kind of where we go will be dependent on how good the results are in terms of whether we evaluate corporate M&A at the corporate level, any further financings, any other strategic transactions we could do. I'd say that's really going to be the key milestone is really drill results from Golden Rose, and then have at a corporate level. And in addition, on the exploration front, I would think at this point, based on what we're seeing already so far, certainly more surface level exploration. I think that's probably a given, as well as probably an IP survey in Q1. Surface exploration probably around Q2 when the spring thaw happens, so you can actually get people out on the ground, and very likely an additional round, although that will depend kind of as to scope and location. First round. Let's see. Can you discuss your capital position and needs to support your exploration and drill programs? I think this is going to be the last question I'm able to have in our time. Our capital position at September 30th was $4.9 million. We've definitely spent some of it recently on drilling and the surface level exploration. We should finish the year with several $1 million in the bank, which is definitely enough for exploration as well as corporate overhead throughout at least the first little while of the first quarter of next year. We could probably fund a limited exploration program and corporate overhead for all of next year. But at some point, especially if we get good results, and get our share price up a bit, then it would maybe make sense to say, okay, we're going to do sort of larger raise to finance an aggressive exploration program across the entire property to really accelerate ourselves. But right now, we're well financed. We don't need money, which is great when the market's up and down. And we're very much looking forward to deploying the capital that we do have effectively over the rest of this year and into 2022. And I just want to thank everybody very much for their time here because I'm over time right now. So appreciate your interest. Keep an eye on TRU Precious Metals and hope we get the chance to chat again in the near future.